Hey, we're good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm pretty awesome. So now we're starting your session very soon. We have our Chief Penguin here. How did you get to the title of Chief Penguin?
Yeah, so I used to work at Microsoft, and when I was at Microsoft, I had one of my colleagues. She called herself the Chief Ninja Cat, and then I had a guy on Twitter who calls himself Thready the T-Rex, and I was a little bit jealous, like wait a second, we have a T-Rex and we have a Ninja Cat, and I got nothing. And I didn't have this animal that I thought I could be, and I was working in a bit of a team that was a bit more reserved than maybe other parts of the organization. I ended up leaving, not because of that, but I got a great new job at IBM, and I was taking a trip to Pakistan, and I met a woman who runs an incubator and an accelerator in Karachi, Pakistan. It's called the Nest IO, and it's funded by Google. And she calls herself the Big Bird. And I was like, oh man, now I got a bird, I got a Ninja Cat, I got a T-Rex, and I got nothing. And I thought, okay, what can I be? What can I be? And then I thought, oh, there's all this stuff, when it comes to IBM about open source, and the symbol for open source is the penguin. And so I just for fun started calling myself the Chief Penguin, and it just kind of stuck, and it ended up being changed. I changed it in our corporate directory. So if you go into the IBM like internal directory of job titles, my name says Chief Penguin, and hey, now the UN has written an article and they called me IBM-Z's Chief Penguin. My GM now introduces me as the Chief Penguin, and it's just kind of stuck. So there you go.
Now you're not happy of it anymore with it
No,
anymore?
I love it. No, I love it. I think the funny thing about it is, I was looking at Twitter last week, and a lot of people were talking about, do job titles matter? And I laughed and I thought, I didn't like my other job title, so I just gave myself a new one. Why do you have to follow the rules? Rules are someone else's opinion. So there you go.
Okay, awesome. Uh, just a minute. Answering one of the guys in our team. Great. So now we have, hey, where the audience is growing and we can really start. Let's see what's happening with all the attendees. We still have like about, 80 plus, 90 growing. Great. People. And great. So I'm really excited because you came all the way to Israel, or it probably was an accident that you were in Israel while we had the ISL Summit 2019. And, but Miri, that we have here online, I see as part of our attendees, grabbed you and brought you to our event. How was your experience from last year's summit? What did you take most from last year's summit?
Sorry, what was the question? What did I take most what?
From last year's summit. First of all, how was it for you, and like, what's the thing that you took away from last year's summit?
Oh yeah, it was really great. I actually took a lot of screenshots and actually took and brought some of those things back into my own job. And I think when it comes to building communities and really figuring out what is your purpose and passion, that's something that is kind of innately part of me. And I think I captured some new insights and some new ideas that I hadn't thought about before. And I was still relatively new in my role when I was in Tel Aviv that time. And, I think every time I come to Tel Aviv, I leave with such excitement, and I always leave so full, and, probably too much arak as well, but that's another conversation.
Yeah. We can't wait to have Arak. I don't know how do we do Arak online, but we need emojis of Arak.
You know what? I'm in.
By the way, I was in Sri Lanka, and in Sri Lanka they have Arak as well, but it's a totally different drink. It's a totally different alcohol that looks like a whiskey, but it's also called Arak. So we have the Israeli Mediterranean Arak, and we have the Far East Arak. But guys, we all need to get drunk together after this COVID gets over. It feels like a really bad, like a party gone wrong. And
awesome. I brought back like 3 bottles of arak, and I actually had a friend of mine take me to Ramallah, and I ended up buying arak in Ramallah as well. So I had a bit of a peace treaty between the Audocs in Seattle when I got home.
That's good of you. We're now starting to see peace agreements in the Middle East happening. But before we start, will you in the presentation talk about yourself, because you have such an interesting story, and it's going to be through the presentation, right? So we don't need to do an introduction.
Yeah, I'm going to weave in my personal story throughout the presentation, and I'll start off and talk about some of the kind of more business stuff about my role and what I do. And I will also, I think it's really important when we think about, what is our purpose? What is our passion? What is that fire? What is that heartbreak that brings us to do the things that we do? And I will share, where my fire comes from. A lot of people tell me that they, look at me and think, wow, you've turned, a bad situation into a great one, and you've turned your worst nightmare into your superpower. You'll hear more about what I mean by that. It's a deeply personal
people how to do it, right? You'll give and you'll give insights, not what's your story, and how you'll give people tips how to find their passion. And what I love about finding your passion in the new world, I would say, listen, leadership programs are obsolete. You need to have community programs, because when you have a leadership, it's like all about you. When it's community, it's about helping others with your passion. But the first stage is finding your passion, and this is partially what we brought you on. And you're going to touch a bit about the program, the International Acceleration Program you're leading in IBM, which is super interesting. So Melissa, making challenges into your personal brand and personal passion, and in the end also a bit about the amazing program she's leading in IBM. So Chief Penguin, I'm going to hide myself and let you take it away and go on. Have fun.
Awesome. So first off, I want to thank Mike. I want to thank Ari. I want to thank the organizers for inviting me. I think when you attend a conference, in another country, and you experience it as a participant, and then you get invited to present, it's such an exciting, recognition of really going to a great event and then feeling like you're part of it, and you've got, your own secret sauce to share. So as Mike mentioned, my name is Melissa Sassi, and I am the Chief Penguin of IBM Z. I head up student and entrepreneur experience within my division globally, so that's the IBM Z division. And taking on the student aspect of the world has really been a passion of mine for a very long time. Before I jump into the presentation, I'm going to tell you a story. About 5 years ago, I was really looking for, what is my purpose and what is my passion? I was in a great job. I headed up creative agency management globally at Microsoft. Like really amazing job. I got to work with Hollywood directors. I worked with creatives. I did our celebrity talent. And that sounds really sexy on paper, right? It sounds like an amazing job. But I went in, I was good at my job, I made good money at my job, but there was something inside of me saying that, this is not what fires you up to wake you up in the morning. And I'm very thankful that my manager at the time, she got me, helped me get a mentor. And Susan Betts headed up brand strategy at Microsoft. She now actually heads up brand strategy at Google. And she has this amazing way of trying to figure out, what is it that you were born to do? Or what is it that maybe you were born to do that you haven't figured out yet? And so we did this bit of exercise, and it was around, are you good at your job? Are you passionate about your job? Are you making the world a better place? Because that's something that's really important to me. And I realized that, again, I had a good job. They needed me to do my job, and it just, again, I didn't wake up in the morning feeling like I got to wake up and go. Don't get me wrong, I was fired up, I had energy, I did a good job, but there was just something inside of me that was missing. And we started listing out all of the different kinds of things that I liked. And I made this list. And on this list was, I really like to work with developers. I really like to work with education. I like social good. I like startups. And these were the things that I wrote down. And funny enough, none of those things had anything to do with my job. And it made me realize that I'm probably in the wrong place. And I was scared to tell my manager. I was scared to tell my manager because I was afraid that that would force me to, move out of, be forced out of my job. Because how do you tell your manager, I'm passionate about these 4 things, and none of that has anything to do with your job, right? She knew it anyway. I didn't have to tell her. And, I started volunteering. I started volunteering and started discovering my passions. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to tell you a little bit about what my job is now. And then I'm going to talk to you about how I got there. And I'm going to give you a number of steps. I think I have 8 in here. I can't remember how many I put, but we're going to go through the process that I went through. And I hope it serves as something that is inspiring for you and also helps you to think about how can you inject purpose and passion into your career if that's something that you haven't done yet. Because I think it's possible, no matter where you are in your career, no matter what you were studying, what you were working as, what you were doing, to find that shift in your career. So for me, I work at the intersection of tech, entrepreneurship, and empowering underrepresented young people. Underrepresented communities. I am the global head of a startup program. We're going to talk about that. It's the IBM Hyper Protect Accelerator, and we're going to talk about how many startups I'm looking for. So any of you who are founders or thinking about becoming a founder, I've got a program, and I'm recruiting 4 startups. I've already filled all the roles on my team. Next thing is students. I help young people to come into our world of technology. And I work with young students, and I work with students of all ages to think about why should they come into tech, why should they stay in tech, and empower them with skills to make meaningful use of the technology in front of them, whether that's becoming an entrepreneur or being an intrapreneur. I'm both an entrepreneur and an intrapreneur. I have my own startup. Actually, I have 2, both ed tech platforms. One is focused on the kind of certifications for individuals who are kind of, let's call it new collar workers. It hasn't launched yet, it's new. Second one is more geared toward youth and is a gamified experience. This also hasn't launched yet. I'm building both of them. A gamified experience associated with getting real practical skills and badges when it comes to entrepreneurship, digital skills, and professional development. So all of those things that you need to be prepared for the future of work. I also have my own nonprofit, and we have taught tens of thousands of young people to code in 12 countries. I have a co-working space in Tunisia, so sandwiched in between Algeria and Libya. And we started it by surprise. And I fell upon my purpose and passion by surprise. And what I mean by that is I'm going to tell you my story. Everyone has a founder story, and here's mine. So 13 years ago, my children and I became victims of parental kidnapping. Now, don't worry, my children, they're safe, they're healthy, they're normal adjusted kids, but I never got them back. We're in contact, I know where they are, and I'm unable to take them out of their country, their father's country, which is now their country, Tunisia. And think about that. You wake up in the morning, you were a mom, you took your kids to soccer, you went to school, you did your job, you did all the things that you're supposed to do in life, and you followed the rules, you did your education, you worked hard, and wow, I woke up one day while I was on a business trip, and my ex-husband picked up my kids from school, he got on a plane, and he took them to his country. That is my worst nightmare. That is every mother and father's worst nightmare. That's every family's, that's every child's worst nightmare. All of those movies that you see about these things happening, this happened to me in real life. And I was a mess. I was a disaster, of course, as anyone would be. I'm very thankful that I have a very, very good group of friends, a great group of friends, an amazing group of friends, and they alternated sleeping on my couch because they were afraid to leave me alone. and rightfully so. I was a mess. Thankfully, I made it to work, but it wasn't a time where I felt comfortable talking about my personal situation in front of my employer or telling them what was going on in my life. I was suffering from severe depression. I wanted to die. I did not want to wake up in the morning anymore, but I did, and I went to work. I probably wasn't the most focused employee on the planet. I got this big job on Wall Street. I was a director on Wall Street. I had a big amount of responsibility, and I was a mess. I got up enough courage to, after the fall of the Ben Ali regime, to go and visit my kids. And I was scared. Imagine you're going to go and, visit your kids after you hadn't seen them. And you also, are going to have to stay with the family of the people who kidnapped your kid, because you have, no chance of going through, at that time, a challenging legal system with red tape and bureaucracy and corruption. And at that time, I thought, what can I do? And I decided to play the long game. Let my kids that I love them, let them know that I care about them, and let them know that I'm their mother, and over time tell them, what actually happened when they're old enough to learn. They became old enough to learn, and I explained to them what had happened. And they understood, and they knew several other children in their classroom who had the same thing happen to them. I sent presents. I visited when I could. I taught myself how to speak his dialect of Arabic. I'm not great, but I speak a mean Tunisian Arabic, and I'm a great Tunisian cook as well. One day, my daughter said to me, Mommy, I'm learning Microsoft. And at that time, I was working at Microsoft. And I said, what do you mean you're learning Microsoft? That's her accent. And I realized that she was learning Word in her classroom, and they only had one computer in the classroom for all of the 35, 40 kids. They'd have this old clunky laptop and a projector, and we know this happens all over the world, not just in her classroom. She'd go up, the kids would go up, and they type, open file, type, blah, blah, blah. And I realized, how can my daughter, how can Zahran, how can Yumna really learn to be prepared for the future without truly incorporating technology into their classroom? So I set out on this mission to bring computers to her classroom. That led to participating in a large global hackathon at Microsoft, where I created a team to hack into device giving. Our team won first place out of 4,000 teams in the Inspired Me category worldwide. We changed the entire device giving policy at Microsoft. Anytime you see a device now given out to anyone across the planet coming from Microsoft, that came from my hackathon. I pitched to Satya Nadella. I wasn't supposed to. I stepped in front of him actually and asked him if he wanted to hear about my project. He had cameras on him. He couldn't say no. We implemented this policy to enable nonprofits and other entities to gain access to many of the devices that they had already that had never been connected to their network. I'm a hidden figure. I didn't realize what the importance of establishing a personal brand, taking ownership of the work that you do, and making sure that no one else can put their stamp on the work that was really your idea and something that you created and you made happen. Those are some of the skills that I've learned through this. But what I've done is I've now created my own nonprofit in their country. We're the largest nonprofit focused on digital skills and entrepreneurship in the country. It's all youth-led and youth-run. We have funding from the US Department of State, from HP. We've gotten funding from Google, from UNESCO, from SAP. And what originally was me having an idea with a bunch of engineers traveling around the country, teaching young people to code during vacation with my children, turned into a worldwide movement and my life's work. And what I like to say is that my work now revolves around empowering young people through technology, thinking about what it means to make meaningful use of the internet, and building a global community based on digital inclusion. Because at the end of the day, with 50% of the world offline, 50% of the world is left behind. So what can I do as Melissa Sassi? What can I do as Melissa Sassi, the CEO and founder of Mentor Nations? And what can I do as the global head of entrepreneur and student experience within one of the largest tech companies on the planet? I can make a difference. And I can do that through community. I can do that through engaging my community. Young people in Tunisia have seen decreases in violent extremism from young people gaining access to jobs, getting access to economic opportunity. And I'll tell you what, now when the family turns on the TV, sometimes they see me on it, doing an interview in Tunisian Arabic. So this for me has been how I took my purpose and passion, turned it into a career, and also turned my worst nightmare into my superpower. I speak often at the UN, the World Bank, the World Economic Forum. I am the chair of the Digital Skills Working Group within IEEE, the largest engineering organization on the planet with 400,000 members worldwide. We just released the world's first global standard for what it means to be digitally literate. It was just adopted by the state of Saudi Arabia, where I was at the announcement ceremony at the C20, which is essentially an advisory group that brings thoughts and recommendations into the G20. And so, in short, this is how I've taken my worst nightmare and turned it into my superpower. You may not have a worst nightmare, but all of us have heartbreak. And from heartbreak comes about ideas and passion and grit and all of these things that can help you identify what is it that wakes you up in the morning. What is it that makes you want to do the things that you do? Do you wake up in the morning and feel like, I was meant to do this and I'm going to go do this? I'm going to talk about how I got there. All right. And don't worry, we're not going to talk about all the sad stuff anymore. One of the things that I'm known for is making the impossible possible. And it's very serendipitous that I mention this. Years ago, the president of my creative agency when I was at Microsoft, and currently is the president of the creative agency that works at IBM, and no, he didn't follow me, and no, I didn't follow him. We're just happy to be here together. He said to me, your strength is making the impossible possible. And then the other day, so I posted that on Twitter the other day. This is my strength. This is my superpower. And my boss sent me, or a good friend of mine, not my boss, a good friend of mine who works at IBM sent me this link. And it was this Adobe Creative Strengths Identifier thing. And it goes through all these questions, and you answer these questions, and it tells you about your creative personality. And mine is a visionary. And what it said is, I make the impossible possible. And I thought, wow, do these people really know what they're talking about or what? And, you know, are they really paying attention to what's happening in my phone and what I'm saying? Somebody's definitely listening to what I'm doing. No, just the test was right. So you really are the only thing standing in between the current you and the future you. If I can, you know, turn a situation of mine into my superpower, I think you can turn anything into your superpower. One thing you should know, I'm not an engineer. I have written one line of code in my life, and it's hello world. I manage teams of engineers. I work with thousands of engineers, hundreds of thousands of engineers, maybe even millions of engineers across the planet. You know, every year I probably have tens of thousands of people, you know, in the different talks that I do. And I didn't always stand up on a stage. I didn't always have a story to tell. And I started thinking about, how did I actually bring my purpose and passion into my career, get beyond my personal circumstances, not be the victim, but be the empowered person, the empowered woman, a woman who empowers others, who empowers other women. So the first thing that I did was really define my vision and think about, okay, you know what? I don't have to be this or that. I'm an and. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an intrapreneur. I will have my PhD in the next 2 months. I'm getting ready to defend. And by the way, my topic is on the digital inclusion of underserved and underrepresented communities. Be an and. You do not have to choose between being the founder of a startup and being an employee. I know some companies try to force you into this. It is unfair. Be who you want to be. So what is your passion? Not all of us know. I didn't know what my passion was until my daughter said, Mommy, I'm learning Microsoft, and I jumped in a car with a bunch of stinky engineers and a bunch of computers and traveled around the country teaching kids to code. I didn't know what coding was, but I had great platforms like those from Scratch and code.org to help me, to guide me through it, and a bunch of smart engineers to help me think about what does digital inclusion actually mean. So at IBM, we use this word called a wild duck, and it's, from what I understand, someone who kind of goes against the norm, really goes against whatever everyone else is doing, and is innovative, thinks outside in. So imagine the wild duck in you. Who is that you want to be? Is that person different than who you are right now? So really think about what is your, what is your vision of where you want to go? Not all of us have a passion. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, maybe you have no freaking clue. For me, I felt like the UN Sustainable Development Goals were a great place to start, to really figure out what are those wicked problems that the world is trying to solve. For me, look, I read each of them and I thought, which ones speak to me? Okay, yeah, I care about clean water and sanitation. Okay, I care about climate action. But I don't wake up in the morning thinking about, I need to strive for clean water in the ocean. I think it's a good thing, but it doesn't wake me up in the morning. Good or bad, it doesn't wake me up in the morning. Education and gender equality and, decent work and economic growth, for whatever reason, those wake me up. So if you want to try to figure out what are your tips, what are those things that will help you kind of identify what your vision is? My thought is kind of look at these, see which one speaks to you, and identify which one is your passion. And once you identify which one or which ones, because again, we are ands, we're not ors, what is the intersection of those things? What is the intersection of being an entrepreneur, an intrapreneur, a nonprofit boss, a startup boss? Again, there are many different things that you can put together into one. For me, initially, it was, I want a job that has something to do with some of these things. Something that has to do with making the world a better place, something that has to do with education, empowering underserved communities. I want to feel good, and I want to make people feel good. I want to feel like I'm creating social good in the world. Next thing is, okay, you figured out your passion, you figured out where you kind of want to go. It doesn't need to be one thing, it can be a bunch of things. What are your gaps? For me, my gaps were, I wanted to go into these careers, but nobody wanted to talk to me because I didn't have any experience working with startups. I did not have any experience working in education, but I was very educated. I did not have, experience working with developers, and I wasn't a developer. Like, how the heck are you going to do that? And so I went out and I did a lot of informationals with a lot of different people to learn about their jobs. What do they do? What do they feel got them to where they are? What are those skills that enabled them or empower them to be who they are? I found kindred spirits. I found people who believed in themselves, people who were empowered and all about empowering others. But I knew I had to invest. I wasn't just going to go from here to there. This at the bottom is a picture of the US ambassador to Tunisia. That's me over on the right-hand side. The guy next to me, that's my CTO of my nonprofit and the CEO of my for-profit, one of my for-profits. The cultural attaché to Tunisia is in here. And many of you might ask, wow, you were hanging out with the ambassador. You were at the American embassy. Why didn't you get your kids back? What's up? My kids have been there for 13 years. It's now their home. And they want to finish out their school, and once they finish out their school, they'll leave when they're old enough, and that's the decision that they've made. And I've told them if they want me, now that they're old enough to decide, to try to go back to court because things are different now, I will do that for them. But they've all said, you know what, Mom, we've been here long enough, let us finish out our school and then we'll come to you. This is one of our coding camps. Every year we run countless coding camps teaching young people about problem solving, critical thinking, innovation, and the skills that they need to deter themselves from violent extremism, empowering them to create their own jobs and doing things that would enable them to move into a job that someone else might give them or they might earn. So I think that it's really important for people who to listen to you, but you also have to know that not everybody's going to open the door for you. Sometimes you have to open that door for yourself, but you need to find kindred spirits. And you may have one, you may have two, you may not have 10 or 20. Over time, you'll figure out how to gravitate, if you haven't already, toward the people who truly are empowering you, truly are sharing the stage and inviting you to be there. But don't forget, you got to reciprocate that. When you get an opportunity to be on the stage, when you got an opportunity to do something, invite others to be with you. You naturally have to give yourself space and time. You need to practice mindfulness, prioritize and organize. For me, I looked at, okay, what are the jobs that are open now that I could go into? What are some of these things that I could do? I knew that I needed to think and reflect. I have a gap. I have a vision. How do I get from here to there? I now work actively with UNESCO. We're doing another awesome coding ideathon that's coming up soon that I will tell you about if we have time. I've also recently done a National Day of Code in the island of Cape Verde. It's a small island state off of the west coast of Africa. The Prime Minister did a shout out in Facebook about my program, and they created a National Day of Code, where all of the young people across the country joined me in learning the introductory building blocks of learning to code. We brought famous musicians from Cape Verde, who are now my buddies, and we created amazing videos that demystified computer science. We coded with them for the first time, and they realized, what does it mean to code? We brought role models. I'm in the process of rolling this out in Mozambique, and I am planning to make a recommendation after a keynote that I'm doing this month that will go straight to the Minister of IT in the state of Nigeria, in the country of Nigeria. It is my dream to create an International Day of Code, which does not exist right now, where the world combines itself together to demystify computer science and empower everyone and anyone to learn the introductory building blocks of learning to code. Not everybody's going to be an engineer, not everybody's going to be a data scientist, but we need to create space and time for people to recognize the different skills of the future. Now, I presented last week at the Internet Governance Forum, which is a UN event, and I did a big call to action calling on the world to create an International Day of Code. We'll see where it's going to go. We'll see what happens. But if you see an International Day of Code that lands in the calendar next year or the year after, or whenever it happens, you know where it came from, and hopefully I won't be a hidden figure again. So the next thing you need to do is create your plan to fill your gaps. As in any project or initiative or activity, you got to have a plan. You need to have goals, and you need to have a timeline, and you need to take baby steps. You're not going to all of a sudden just take over the world with a small crash course. This is the startup accelerator that I run. It's called IBM Hyperprotect Accelerator. I will give you a blog in a second that you can check out. I have 45 startups in my program now. It's global. So anyone, anywhere can apply. Less than $1 million in revenue, less than 5 years old. Companies that are dealing with sensitive information. So it's all about security, data protection, and privacy. It's not about every startup on the planet. Sorry, for those of you who might not be dealing in personally identifiable information like medical records, financial records, that sort of thing. If you are, I want to talk to you. You can tweet me. You can reach out to me through Twitter, Mentor Africa with a K. I will give you the blog so you can read about our cohort. From this year, I brought on 45 startups. Next year, I will have a total of 100. So you do the math there. If you're a startup founder, I want to talk to you. And I will give you that blog so you can read a little bit more about what's included in the program. You get 2 years of business, or 2 years of technical mentorship, 1 year of business mentorship, access to the IBM network, access to our partner. Let's go sell together. Let's go create together. Let's go change the world together. How am I doing, Mike?
Listen, I'm getting private messages like from all social media. They're like, oh my God, I'm like torn. I can't listen. Like, it's like in a good way. Like I can't stop listening. And like what? And like people who joined 5 minutes late, or like, what's the story? Like, so yeah. And you know, I was actually writing it in another group of my network. I sometimes sent to another closed groups of community leaders, and one guy was asking like, and why is this related to communities? And like, yeah, of course, you know, it's everybody has, you know, not stories like yours, but everybody, you know, whenever some people, I'm sure that, you know, they got their dress that they bought is like thrown under the bus or something, like, oh my God, like, and you don't have proportions. And your story puts every other story in fucking proportion.
It's a shame. There you go. So big thing, I would say, I want to make sure to get through my checklist so that, and I'm almost done, I'll kind of zip through it. You know, go beyond your day job, take on stretch assignments, you know, volunteer with a startup, give forward to nonprofits. That's how I enabled myself to move from career A to career B, was doing these things and then getting real experience by volunteering with a startup and giving forward with nonprofits until I actually became my own entrepreneur. I didn't even see myself as an entrepreneur, but it's super important to gather your squad. Oh, that's me. That's when I pitched to Satya. Check that out. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
There we go. You can tell he's listening, and I'm like,
no, I was just want to, because just to help us be on time. How many slides more?
I'm almost done.
Okay, so I'll get off, and we just want to cap it by 45 more or less. And I also, people here have questions, and you know, you talked in so many international stages, and your story, I heard it from Miri, and but I think you're more than a story. You're a human being, flesh and blood.
Yeah, I try to be human. I try to be transparent. I try to be approachable. I try to be like, one thing about me is what you see is what you get. Whether you see me here, I'm myself. Like I'm the same person at work and at home. I'm a friend. You know, I reciprocate. You know, I help others when they need help from me. I document my stuff. I even talk about when I don't do something right. You know, I'm not afraid to say, you know what, I screwed this up and let's do a better job next time. But I think the biggest thing that anybody needs to think about is doing the thing, whatever that thing is, you know, learning it, creating it, and going out and changing the world. So I hope everyone will join me to empower youth to code, to empower startups to build and scale. Again, you can reach me at Mentor Africa with a K. These are the blogs that I think will give you a little bit more information about the programs that I run. Again, by the end of next year, I'll have 100 startups in my program. This is the blog where you can actually read more about my Startup Accelerator. We're going to create the new call for applications in April. So again, hit me up on Twitter, Mentor Africa with a K. Any of you have students, if any of you are students, I'm going to feed 2 children for a day if you go through level 1 of this skill building platform through World Food Program. Learn new skills, get jobs, do cool stuff, help me achieve my goals so my boss likes me. So the best way to connect with me is through Twitter. I don't know if that's cool or not, but it's the easiest way to find me.
It's cool. It's just it's less common in Israel, but like we have people here from India and all over the world. So Twitter is one of the best ways. But if I can say that on Facebook you're active. And
I am active in Facebook, but I do get a lot of requests, so I'll try to accept as much as I can.
LinkedIn is also a good platform, right? We connected on LinkedIn also.
Yeah.
everywhere. You're just, you're in all the countries, you're in all the programs, you're doing so much stuff. But that's, I think, another thing that people can take from you, the inspiration to expand yourself, the ability. And I think it's also because, and let's go to the questions, because people had some really great questions that I was going to say now, but I'm going to give the other people and do that in the connection. There was one question about how do you really find your passion? Because you were talking about your pain, but maybe we'll put who was on stage, Yael B. with Racheli. I'm going to add her in a second. Yael B, can you raise your hand? And then I'll upload you on the platform. If not, just Anna or Elinor, that you had good questions, just raise your hand and we'll let you speak to Melissa.
I like this platform, so I need to talk to you about this platform. I have something that I'm doing, and I think it would be really good. So let's talk, Mike.
I'm actually to do that. So here we have a platform, and we have Anna, and yeah, let's have Yael with the question.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, hi, Yael.
First, thank you for your talk. It was amazing. I was shocked. I wanted to ask, what are your tips to get to your passion? Like you talk, look at your vision, look at your way, what do you want to do? How do you do it? What are the tools that you like chose and took?
So for me, it really kind of started out with kind of my heartbreak, and recognizing that my lifeline was to my children was the internet, and was digital skills and devices. And it just I'd love to tell you that I had this secret thing or this checklist that I can give you to find your passion, but for me it was something that just popped, and it was there, and I've spent time refining it. And I think how I've refined it is by talking to others who have a similar spark about a similar topic. And then when I kind of went back to the UN Sustainable Development Goals and realized that these very things were big, wicked problems that the world was solving, it just became something bigger than me and bigger than my problem, bigger than my challenge, bigger than my life. And it came into something where it was like, okay, if I'm not going to work on solving this, then who is? And I realized that I got a voice, and I had good ideas. And I think I spent years reading and researching as well. As part of my PhD journey, I looked at every single digital skills framework that exists on the planet. I read hundreds and hundreds of articles and policies, and some of it was dry as hell. But I became an expert in this topic because I realized that it was something that I cared about. My thought is, if you're not sure what you care about, go back to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. If you go to those goals and you go to globalgoals.org, you can read about each and every one and all of the tactics that make up each one. Which one makes your heart beat? Which one makes you think like, this is what I want to do? Because all of these big wicked problems, they can be translated into your life and your community and those around you. And then who's in that space? Are there nonprofits? Are there friends? Are there startups? How can you find people who are like you and interested in that particular topic? Is there a meetup? Is there like an online forum? Are there conferences about this stuff? So you can start to school up. And, I think in order to go and do something, you've got to do your research first, and you have to try your best to become as much as a thought leader as you can. Does that make sense? Is that too fuzzy?
I'm starting writing it down here in the feed. So I
want to recap on that, because it was one thing that, and people ask me, what does IBM to do with communities, and communities, or this talk to do with communities? And I think, first of all, in so many levels it has, but one of the levels here about finding your passion, which is the theme of talk, is when First of all, I think like in everything, like losing weight and every technical stuff you want to do, nothing comes easy. Nothing comes without practice and hard work.
It takes an army. I do not run my programs without my community. Frankly, my marketing team at IBM does no marketing for me. The marketing for my program comes from my audience.
Oh, wow.
It comes from my community. It comes from my founders. It comes from my friends. It comes from people like Mike. It comes from others who help me to get the word out by me saying, hey, Mike, I'm part of your community. You're part of my community. Here's what I'm looking for. Can you help me to spread the word? And by the way, is there anything I can do to help you?
So you're like doing it directly. You're not like waiting that somebody will help you.
But more
I
than
do
that,
it directly.
and more than that, I think what she said, she looks for like-minded people to help. She looks for like-minded people to find her passion. And when you build a community already, because it's hard to, cherry pick and find those people. And if you have a strong, really facilitated community, moderated community, you know to find those people. You know how quickly to find them and how
they just pop out.
That's it.
I have a program that I run for my students. I have 160 IBM Z ambassadors. These are all young students, and they applied for the program. We give them mentorship, and we help them to share their skills forward. They go out and they share their technical skills forward. We train them, they train others, they train others, they train others. I'm doing an ideathon that is going to kick off Computer Science Week. That's going to be all about how can you bring digital skills to your community. And we're going to empower them with personal branding, storytelling, tech for good advice, information on what it means to be digitally literate. We're working with UNESCO. We're working with a lot of different organizations, all student-led. It's going to be student-run and student-led. The voice of the community is what this event's going to be about. But it's not going to be just one event. It's going to continue. So look out for it. It's called IBM Z for Good Ideathon. And if any of you have ideas around how you can bring digital skills to your community, come and join me. We are going to.
Is it already online? Did you already publish it?
Huh?
Did you already publish this program? So it's public? No.
No, I'm telling you in advance. I'm giving you like.
So great.
Yeah.
So we'll have this group, and we'll write Shai, our marketing manager, will make sure to maybe try to and we'll when you guys release it, we'll put it in all our platforms because it's super.
See, this is community right here, Yael. This is community.
Exactly. So, but we have to finish the session. We have to be on time because we have another session. Melissa, you're so amazing. And if you would be so kind, just staying in the platform, maybe joining a table after the session. And I know that Anna and Talia and other members here want to maybe connect with you personally. So if you could just go back to the lounge after I finish the session.
I've got 15 minutes, or I've got 13 minutes. I can stay in the lounge. I have to figure out how to get there. But
I'm going to end the session so you can leave the session and go to the lounge. So if you want to meet Melissa face to face, go to the lounge and meet Melissa.
So I just click on the left at the lounge? Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, good. Bye, everyone, and thank you. Thank you for taking part in this session.
Thank you, Melissa. Bye. Thank you, everyone.